Hey everybody, welcome to Scuba Diver Magazine. Today I'm going to break down a simple long hose primary donate regulator setup. So this video was asked for by subscriber Hartiem Mufti. If you want to see any particular instructional like how-to videos, by all means let us know in the comments below. But long hose primary donate regulators are a slightly different way of setting up your regulators instead of just straight out of the box. It's taken from the Hogarthian setup that's been tweaked and perfected over the years for maximizing safety and practicality. So let's dive into what you need, the hoses that you're going to need as well to set up a long hose primary donate regulator for single cylinders. First, what are you going to need? Well, a long hose primary donate has very similar components to a traditional regulator setup. You just have different length hoses, but you still use a single first stage when you're diving on a single cylinder, 2 second stages, a submersible pressure gauge, and any low pressure inflator hoses that you need for your BCD or a dry suit that you're wearing. Now, in a perfect world, your first stage will have a 5th port coming out of the top like this one, but of course you can still dive a 4-port first stage setup. A lot of divers dive this way and it's perfectly fine. Personally, I prefer a 5th port, but either setup is perfectly fine. For hoses, your primary second stage traditionally goes on the end of either a 5 or a 7 foot long hose, or 150 centimeters and 210 centimeters if you speak metric. The 5 foot hose is usually preferred for open water diving, so you've got less excess hose to deal with, and 7 foot for overhead environments to give that extra length for narrow passages, but there is that extra 2 foot of hose to manage. Which you choose is kind of up to you. Most divers usually end up going for the 7 foot just for that extra. 99% of these hoses, the low pressure ones, are going to be 3/8 inch screw threads. Most first stages are all 3/8 ports for low pressure hoses now, but there are still a handful of first stages, like some Mares, for example, that use a larger 1/2 inch hose screw thread. So pay attention for that if you do dive a Mares first stage. If you're ever in doubt, you can literally measure the port size of whatever is on your first stage, and the larger 1/2 inch, they often have a small tube in the middle as well, but most first stages are just 3/8 of an inch. It's pretty standardized nowadays. Rubber hoses are a bit heavier, but they're nice and smooth, which is particularly nice in warmer waters where your hose wraps behind your neck and you don't have that wetsuit to protect you, so it's nice and smooth against your neck, and they tend to stay where you put them. Braided hoses are far lighter, so they're nice for travel and they can be nice and colorful as well, but they are a bit floaty in the water, especially longer lengths, and they're quite scratchy. So if you're not wearing a wetsuit, it can scratch on the back of your neck. Your alternate second stage can sit on a much shorter hose than a traditional setup, usually around 55 to 60 centimeters long, to keep the hose just really nice and close to your shoulder with no excess slack to snag on anything or get in the way. If the hose is too long, then when your second stage sits in that in the necklace below your chin, the hose just sits over the right hand shoulder D-ring and it just kind of gets in the way. So the hose needs to be just long enough to sit under your chin and then get it into your mouth, but try and reduce any excess. Your SPG sits on a high pressure hose, usually around 65 centimeters long. Again, keeping the hose close and tight to your body, but still long enough to reach and see your SPG. Low pressure hoses, they very much depend on your BCD and your dry suit. Some BCDs have slightly longer corrugated hoses over your left-hand shoulder. Some are shorter, and dry suits have inflators in the center of your chest. Some are offset, so it's best you actually measure the correct hose length that you're going to need from the first stage over or under your shoulder to the valve with a piece of string or an actual tape measure. Otherwise, you're going to want some bungee for your alternates or some kind of necklace kit to hold that second stage in around your neck when it's not in use, a bolt snap with a large eye for your submersible pressure gauge, and a small bolt snap for your primary second stage. Assembling the regulator is easy. For this style of first stage, clockwise, looking from the top down, you're going to fit your dry suit hose, then your BCD hose, your alternate second stage on the right hand side, and your long hose primary on the right hand side behind it. Your submersible pressure gauge goes on the left hand side, the high pressure port on the left, and then you just need to attach your necklace and your bolt snaps. If you have a 5th port first stage like this one, it's a very similar arrangement. However, your long hose is going to route out of that 5th port, out of the bottom, and the first stage angles slightly so that the long hose routes down the side of your tank instead of straight into it, behind your right hand shoulder. The alternate now kicks up a little bit to route over your right hand shoulder. Both the submersible pressure gauge and the dry suit hose angle slightly downwards with it to go behind your left hand shoulder, and the BCD hose has a slight kink to go over your left hand shoulder. For your alternate, you're going to need a necklace to hold it in place. There are pre-made necklaces, but they're a touch quick release for my liking, this style, and you also find pre-made kits, which I'm bit better off. I do prefer these kits. Otherwise, you can do it just with a length of bungee and tuck that under your mouthpiece zip tie to hold that in place, and your necklace is all set up. On your primary, it can be handy to have a compact, a really small bolt snap to clip the second stage in place when it's not in use, to stop it from falling all over the place. There are a few ways to do this. They range from folding an O-ring and then using a zip tie to attach that onto the hose and then the bolt snap onto that. That way it's kind of a quick breakaway. It's secure, but if you need to, you can yank it away. To a section of line that you take off a reel or a spool that can be cut if you need to release it. It's a bit more secure, but of course then you need a cutting device to actually sever that line. How far along the hose the bolt snap goes is kind of up to you and what you feel is convenient. Some divers like it really close to the second stage, and some manufacturers actually put a space on one of the nuts to put a cable tie on. Others like it a bit further away, about a hand's width away, so that it's a bit easier to find and it's less crowded, especially if you're wearing gloves. Similar with your SPG, except the bolt snap has a large eyelet so that you can fit a finger through to control the hose. You want to tie that quite snug to the hose so that the bolt snap doesn't slide up and down the hose, but where you place it is kind of what's convenient to you. You basically want to make sure that that gauge, the SPG, isn't dangling around in the water. To dive the regulator, route your BCD hose along the corrugated hose. You want that quite close. They usually have a section of like bicycle inner tube that holds that actual inflator hose closed to the corrugated hose. Your dry suit hose should tuck under your left hand shoulder and under your BCD shoulder strap to prevent that inflator hose from catching on anything or being confused with any other hose. Your SPG hose is clipped to a bolt snap on your left hand hip so it's secure and out of the way. Then your alternate, pop the hose over your right hand shoulder, the necklace over your head so that the second stage sits around your neck. Dial the breathing resistance in and any venturi system is turned on so that alternate doesn't free flow as soon as you jump into the water. The long hose routes down your right hand side behind your shoulder. It tucks underneath something on your right hand hip, such as a dive knife, a canister battery, or a dedicated hose retainer bar. And then the hose then routes up across your body to your left hand shoulder, around the back of your neck, and then the second stage goes into your mouth. You do the long hose last so that it's free to be deployed and it's not underneath any other hose. Otherwise, that's about it. The things to remember are that you want the correct length of hose for you, and your gear and your actual body size can be different for each diver and configuration. So you want to keep those hoses nice and close to your body so that there's no excess slack that can catch on anything. If you're ever in doubt, literally just measure it twice when it's in position on your body. Use a tape measure to actually measure the correct length of hose that you require. Hoses are screwed in finger tight and then nipped up, but not too tight. It's only just so tight that you can't unscrew it by hand. Too tight and you can damage the threads. And when you're attaching the second stage, use 2 spanners together so that you're not rotating the barrel inside of the second stage. You want to tighten in the hose nut against the valve nut. If you only use a single spanner, you can actually rotate the barrel inside of the second stage and damage your second stage. So try and use 2 spanners and just tighten them against one another. And diving a long hose primary donate does take a little bit of training and some practice. It isn't commonplace right now from the get-go, so it may take a little bit of explaining during a pre-dive check with a brand new buddy, but more and more divers are converting to this style of regulator setup now. And yeah, there you have it, a long hose primary donate regulator setup for single cylinders. Now I'm going to make a similar video for twin cylinder regulator setup, because there you now have 2 first stages and it's not as simple as just taking the right hand hoses and putting them on the right hand first stage, left hand hoses on the left. It's quite the contrary actually, but I will make a separate video on that later if you're looking to set up some regulators for twin sets. Remember to like, share and subscribe, and check out all of our other social media channels. And if you want early access to these videos, consider becoming one of our channel members. I release these videos early for channel members so that they can catch up on them earlier than regular release. But anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you've got any questions, by all means, let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching and safe diving.